discussing the importance of having housing in our communities that work for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. My name is Sean Laham from Self Advocates in Leadership, or SAIL. My visual description is a white middle-aged man with a green sweater on. I have a picture of the SAIL logo and SAIL members in the background. Just a few reminders today. Please use the Q&A box for any questions you have today. It can be found in the More menu. We would prefer you only use the chat today for important links and for those that need it for accessibility reasons. We also need you to click on the globe icon today and select if you want to hear today's program in English or Spanish, as this will help with our interpretation services. And then lastly, we want to encourage all of our speakers today to speak slower so that our interpretation services correctly relays your words. With that, I will pass it to my two co-MCs to introduce themselves.
So Eric, you want to go first?
Thank you, Sean. My name is Eric Mathis. I'm happy to be here today, and I'm wearing glasses, a tan shirt, and a green shirt underneath it here. Feeling great. So, Emily, do you want to go next?
Hi, my name is Emily Rogers. I'm so excited to be here. I am the Director of Public Policy for the DD Council. I'm glad to see everyone today.
Yes. And thank you, Emily and Eric. Now, yeah, it's my
I want to introduce another Sean, Representative Sean Scott, from the 43rd District. He is the Vice Chair of the Labor and Workplace Standards Committee, among other committee duties. Today, Rep. Scott will be discussing housing issues for the DD community. Please welcome Representative Sean Scott.
How's it going, everybody? It's an honor to be here. Calling in from my office in Olympia. I was just elected to the Washington State House of Representatives in November. Legislative session is off to a very fast start, and it's important that while we have a very quick-moving, dynamic environment in Olympia, we don't forget why we were sent here as lawmakers. And one of the reasons why I ever wanted to run for public office and why I wanted to serve in the state legislature is because I know that there's a lot more that we can be doing for folks in our state who have developmental disabilities, specifically with respect to social services, education, and housing. My sister, Nicole, my late sister, Nicole, who passed away in 2019, was very special to me. I was her caretaker for close to 20 years. I was a unionized employee through SEIU 775. And it was really in my experience of being her caretaker that I was able to see all of the ways that so many institutions, so many social services, so much of our society is inaccessible to so many people. And housing really is literally a cornerstone for accessibility in our state. We talk in very, very general terms about the need for more affordable housing. But I think that what is often erased in that discussion is specific concerns that we have to address around accessibility. Economic accessibility, number one, making sure that the housing that we build is genuinely and truly affordable. And I think in the state of Washington, that means investing in social housing, not-for-profit housing, the kinds of housing that I actually grew up in and spent most of my life in. We have to talk about general physical accessibility as well. So many places where we even stayed when I was coming up with my sister Nicole, where we did not have the appropriate accommodations, and so it made getting around very difficult. those are things that we have to address, and those are issues that we have to make sure that we're putting a concerted effort behind fixing in the state of Washington. And we're in a climate right now, obviously in our federal situation, where a lot of fear and division is being sowed. People are being told to be wary and fearful of people who are different from them. We're becoming a less inclusive society generally. And there's a lot that we can do at the state level to make sure that that is not the case anymore, and that we can push back against that. And what ends up happening actually when we pay particular attention to accessibility, physical accessibility, particularly with folks who might have developmental disabilities, is that things become more inclusive for everybody generally. One example of this that I think often of is when you look at some of those ramps that are added to the sides of streets that are wheelchair accessible for folks, so that curbs are a little bit less steep and are slanted. That has a positive effect for everybody. If you're a runner, like I enjoy running, and oftentimes have, tripped or stumbled on a curb as I'm trying to get from one street to another. I always get happier as somebody who is out seeing streets of that nature, because I know that it means that there was actual public action to make sure that our public accommodations are more accessible and safe for everybody. And that is going to extend to the decisions that we make with housing and making our housing more accessible for folks who have developmental disabilities. So this is an issue that I care so much about, just because a lot of the values that I have as somebody who's a public servant were forged in my experience of being a caretaker to somebody who had cerebral palsy, who is very close to me. So it's an honor to be here with everybody. I'm not really somebody who enjoys doing a lot of talking at people. So if we have a couple of questions and things of that nature, we can make this more conversational. That would be great too.
Thank you. But that's are there any weapons?
I do there, Sean. This is Kyle Matheson. First of all, welcome. Second, Mr. Scott. You truly believe in the housing market. Do you also want to see? We have 4 remaining state institutions that are in our state. Do you truly believe in eventually helping co-sponsoring or putting your name down as one of the sponsors to close them down? Because there's a bill out now in the legislature on Rainier and Yakima Valley. I just want to know, do you support it and making sure people get out and have their housing and all that?
I would like a bit of clarification around the nature of the bills that you discussed. You said that there were 4 bills that were in the legislature that were relevant to housing for folks with developmental disabilities. I just want to make sure that I understand the nature of those bills.
That is one about housing. It's about rent stabilization. The other one is closing down our state institutions. We have 4 that is left, and they're focusing on 2 of them right now, which is Rainier and Yakima. I just want to know, do you support closing down those state institutions where people with disabilities and having them go in the community?
If House Bill, no one in House Bill 1472.
The rent
It's House Bill
stabilization.
1472 is the bill.
Okay, so rent stabilization is a policy that I support fully in the 43rd legislative district, which is the center of Seattle, Capitol Hill, Wallingford, the University District, Eastlake, the densest legislative district in the state, over 70% renters. Rent stabilization is a bill that I support that was passed out of the House last year and that I believe died in the Senate last year. So, the representative who sat in the seat before me, Representative Frank Chop, was a champion for renters and for working families in many ways and for truly affordable housing. I look forward to carrying on that legacy in this seat to the best that I can. So I will support rent stabilization full well knowing that our real fight is going to be making sure that our counterparts in the Senate feel the same urgency in this issue and take the correct course of action as we have historically in the House of Representatives over the last couple of terms. I have to confess, I have not looked into the second matter of bills. I want to make sure that I'm doing everything that I can to do right by folks, by disabled Washingtonians. And so the closure bills for the DD institutions, I have to read and do a little bit more background on those to figure out what exactly the impact of that decision might be. How is it going to impact our most vulnerable populations? Is that a desirous course of action for us to take before I can commit one way or the other or voice my opinion about that issue?
Perfect, because currently right now there's a lot of abuse going on in the state institutions, the institutions right now, and we
Mhm.
want to make sure that hey, they want equal opportunity in their own community instead of because one of the biggest things that's been happening is called the bandage effect. They're pouring funds in to keep the roof over their head, but still there's still abuse going on.
Thank you, Kyle. We have another hand up.
Go ahead, thank you, I'm done.
Emily Walderton.
Hi, welcome. Um, I was wondering if you believe on having houses that people with neurodivergence, as I say myself, if there's a way to get houses that we can afford to buy for ourselves, because everything feels like people are buying, that people are stuck in houses because of what is it called? Institutions, as the guy was saying, which I think is really sad. So is there a way to buy out for ourselves our own house?
Mhm.
Because there's so many houses out there that are being empty and not being used. Like
Mhm.
we have a family friend who's a real estate agent, and she said in Town Water, there's so many houses that are empty because the prices are just so expensive. So there's got to be able to reuse those houses,
Mhm.
you know? Got to be.
Right.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
It's a very good point and a very, very good question. Washington State, to the best of my understanding, has around 250,000 homes that are or domiciles, so a combination of homes, apartments, uh, that are registered as vacant in the most recent survey that was taken through the census that occurred a couple of years ago. And those homes that are vacant are one aspect of the issue. There's a general affordability aspect as well, where a lot of the homes that we are seeing created by certain market policies are not accessible in more ways than one to the people in our state. On top of that, there's a construction issue as well, where one way that you can remedy inaccessible homes is through building others that are more accessible. However, many of our neighborhoods have restrictive zoning laws that make that difficult to do, particularly in big cities like Seattle, which I represent in the state legislature, Olympia, Bellevue, many other cities across our state that have restrictive zoning policies that make public or social or accessible housing difficult to build. So the first thing that we want to consider is loosening or relaxing some of those zoning laws, number one. And then to the point of the question that you asked around homebuyers as assistance for folks who have developmental disabilities, this is action that the state legislature has taken for a number of other vulnerable groups. We created a program 2 years ago in the Covenant Home Ownership Act that created a down payment assistance for first-time homebuyers that came from families that suffered segregation in a previous, less exclusive time in our state's history. There's no reason why we can't extend the same support to disabled folks and people who have developmental disabilities and neurodivergent folks in our state. So that is a very good question. I do support providing that support, and I want to see what it is that we can do around that issue. And I would love to get back to your coalition at a later point about that.
Yeah, thank you. And by the way, I really like your story about your sister. That made me emotional. So thank you for sharing that story. Appreciate that. And it's nice to actually have someone to talk about housing, because my dream is to get my own place. To, me being 39, I love living with my family, but I also want to be in my own space too. So that's why I was asking if there's a way to find housing that we can pay for ourselves, not having our parents pay for it, and be independent and learning how to do those things.
Okay, okay, Emily. I'm
Mhm,
thinking basically evidence.
mhm.
We do have to move on because we have a long list. But thank you, evidence for being here today. So, thank you. And we will probably get out an email. The next is Weapons Cafe.
Now it's my pleasure to introduce my coworker Kathy Murasi, who will give us an overview.
Sorry about
Great.
the name.
Let's see if this is going to work. Okay, are you seeing my screen? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And I've got to see if I can get it to move. Okay, so today's hot topic is housing, and specifically around more on the physical housing, but let me move along here. See if I can get there we go. When we talk about housing, there's different pieces that are part of housing. There's the actual physical part, the bricks and mortar, that make up a physical house or an apartment. And then there's the supports and services for people with IDD to live in the housing. And then there's the workforce of people that we need to provide the care. And it's really important to think about all three of those things, because they all need to work together, and we need them all to work together so that that's what makes us secure in a home, is to make sure that we have a place to live, that we have the supports we need, and that the caregivers to provide the care that we need. So just a couple of things. Okay, come on. There we go. Oh, I went too far. So yes, our problem is that we don't have enough affordable, accessible housing. Let me go back. I want to go here to this slide. This is just important to know. Sometimes people ask, well, what are the housing models? And which waiver do I need to be able to get on to have that kind of housing? So in other words, most of our folks need to have our supports are provided by either basic plus waiver or a core waiver, or if they're kids, they may be living at home and have an IFS waiver. I'd like to show what the various under each waiver, what possibilities what options are available under them. So the IFS and SIBs are really for folks living at home with their parents, right? And the basic plus, most of the people live at home with their family. But they also have the option for an adult family home. And adult family homes are usually between it can be as much as 8, but most of them are 4 to 5 people living together in a home with a caregiver. Sometimes the caregiver lives in the home. Sometimes they have staff that comes. And they basically pay for, you pay room and board to the care provider, and then through your waiver through personal care, they pay a rate to the adult family home operator. And then there is something called shared living, and Pam Blanton's going to talk about that in just a minute. That's where people share a home and share their expenses. and share some of their care. They may share a care provider. So those are the options if you live on Basic Plus. On the core waiver, there's some other options. Again, living at home, supported living, and we have a whole next week. All we're going to talk about is supported living, just so you know. But it's a where an agency provides your care, and you may live in your own home or an apartment or with some other folks. And then SOLA's the means they're state employees. Companion homes is where one person lives with a care provider together, and just one person with a disability lives there, which is a kind of a cool model. There's alternative living, and those folks usually get like 10 hours a week of additional care beyond their personal care. There are group training homes. Those are traditional group homes. They're a little bit bigger. They might have 6 to 12 people in them, I believe, living together and receiving care. And then also shared living technically could be on the core waiver. Community protection is much like supported living, but it's for a specific population. But I think it's important to understand what are your options and which waiver you have to have, get the options that you may need. So again, our issue is that we don't have enough affordable, accessible, and I would add inclusive housing. Because our population frequently are what is considered extremely low income. And so for SSI, the SSI is only like $967 a month. Plus you have a limit of assets for $2,000. So that's hard to save up for a down payment or a, first and last month's deposits for a home, for a place to live when you can't save more than $2,000. So, and the other really big deal, it's pretty obvious, is housing in Washington is extremely expensive. The average studio apartment in 2022 was like between $1,200 and $1,600 a month. That's statewide. If you look in the, Seattle area, it's much higher than that. So with that being said, it's so expensive that there was a study recently done by the Technical Assistance Collaborative that says there's no place in the US housing market where a person living solely on SSI. So if you only have SSI, there's no housing market that you can afford a safe, decent apartment without rental assistance. So really what we are is priced out of the housing market, that you just don't have enough there. And thank you, Kelly. Kelly put in about adult family homes in the chat box that there is, for adult family homes, you don't have to be on a waiver to be in an adult family home. So you could also, if you aren't a DDA client, you can still have services in an adult family home. So that's really important information to know. So here's the deal. So, we can't afford places to live. It's really expensive. Down here, there was a study done that it shows there's an unmet need of 37,000 units that we need for people with IDD in the state of Washington alone. That's how many units we're short. We need that many more affordable places to live. Right now, DDA only has 1,382 units that are within the Housing Trust Fund or other places that are set aside for people with IDD. So we're just scratching the surface as far as having enough housing for folks. So I think, gotta look. So what is needed? We need places that are affordable, accessible, and integrated into our communities. Accessibility, there was a study shows that only 6% of housing across the entire US is accessible. And of the accessible housing, only 20% is occupied by people that actually need to have an accessible unit. So in other words, there's a lot of accessible units that are going to people that don't need physically accessible units. So that's discouraging, right? Okay. With that, I'm checking time. Let's see. I'm going to let Pam Blanton go next, and then I'm going to come back and show a video. And I think somebody was going to introduce her.
Emily, are you ready?
Sure. Sorry, I couldn't find the unmute. Um, so next we'll have Pam Blanton, and she is with Partners for Housing. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, everyone. Grateful to be here today. My name is Pam Blanton. I'm the founder and CEO of Partners for Housing. I've been working in housing and services for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities for more than 30 years in Washington State. We're very, very grateful to the Dan Thompson Memorial Fund for a grant we received 2 years ago to help serve individuals and their families with housing. So what we do is we help families and individuals answer 3 critical questions. What do I need to live outside my family home? Who will I live with? And how do we afford it? And so we have a few different services that we offer. We were funded by the Dan Thompson Memorial Fund to offer our benefits and housing review free to families in Washington State. Our benefits and housing review is something that anybody can access online through our website. It's an assessment that'll ask a bunch of questions. Once you complete those questions and submit them, then we do a benefits review and we schedule a follow-up consultation with the individual and or their family. So what we do is make sure that you have all the benefits that you're eligible for, including services from the Developmental Disabilities Administration or Home and Community Services. We make sure you have the full amount of SSI that you're eligible for, and have access to food benefits and Medicare Advantage programs if you're eligible for that. But our secret sauce is really helping people get on Section 8 wait lists across the nation. Section 8 is a housing subsidy that will allow you to rent from any private market landlord to subsidize your rent. So it's a very valuable benefit for people who need a housing subsidy. So the first step is our benefits and housing review. We also have a roommate matching pool where people can go look for compatible roommates in order to share the costs of housing. And like everything, when we can share costs, they become much more affordable. And we also help families and individuals set up shared living homes. And shared living is when people with disabilities live together like every other person who moves out of their family home for the first time. They need roommates, typically to afford the rent. They happen to need support services too. And there's ways to share those services. And so we help families and individuals figure out how to do that. So shared living is really a family-driven housing solution with their loved one in the center and participating all along the way. With our Dan Thompson funding, we've partnered with 6 nonprofits across the state to help us reach individuals and their families. We've served more than 1,500 people in the last 2 years to help them access benefits. And you know, we start when folks are transitioning from the child to the adult service system, but we help people all the way up as they get older as well. So with shared living, you can be, like Kathy mentioned, on multiple different waivers. What we want to do is help families explore housing options, and when they access our benefits and housing review and have a follow-up consultation, we talk with them about what housing option is best for them and which waiver they might need to be on to access that housing choice. And so we'd love to help as many families as we can. I don't know how much more time I have. I know time is limited. Feel free to reach out to us. I'll put my email in the chat. Also our website, if you go to partners4housing.com, you can sign up and claim your free benefits and housing review. And that can start the process with us in helping you understand what options might be available for housing. If there's any questions, I can take a few, or maybe Kathy, we need to move on.
We could probably take one question if you have.
There's one question in the Q&A.
Can somebody read that to me? I'm not.
Yeah, let me see. Let's see. Somebody just said that they had the review and it was extremely helpful. So that's not a question. Is there another question?
We've helped more, like I said, about 1,500 people in the past 2 years. Our average, we send out a survey after each one to ask for feedback. Our average is 9.2 out of 10. So people find our services very helpful. We help them navigate across multiple siloed service systems, and we get to talk with them for about an hour about their particular desires for housing and what they want that to look like.
I can read out thank you for that. This is Christy. I can read out the 2 questions in the Q&A if you would like.
Thank you.
The first one is, can you describe social housing?
Social housing.
And that's from Martha. Martha, do you want to expand on your question? Okay, we can come back to that one. The next one is from Glenn. Is FREE's federal assistance program impacting Section 8 housing vouchers?
The freeze, there's a lot of conversation about that, and I think Kathy's going to speak to that in a little bit. So I think I might leave Kathy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute. I think I know it's on a lot of people's minds, the freeze that happened yesterday. Okay, Emily, do you have one more question?
Excuse me. Yeah, my question is, you know how the seniors that have the senior houses living, and they have that really nice community and they have swimming pools and everything? How come we can't have a community like that for people with neurodivergence?
Yes, and that's a really good question, and there's a lot of people that are interested in that. There's restrictions on how environments that Medicaid services can provide support, and I think that's the biggest challenge with that.
Because
Exactly.
I'm like, how does the seniors, how are seniors able to have that, but why can't we have that, you know?
Mhm.
And
Like,
you know, there's if you look at something like Stevens Place that's down in Vancouver, you'll see that kind of a model, but you can't use your Medicaid funding there. It's all private pay. And that is some more advocacy that we need to do at the federal level so people have more choice about where they live.
yeah.
Thank you so much, Pam.
You're so welcome. Please reach out if we can be of assistance to anyone. We have a really good team, and we're here to take your calls and answer your questions.
Happy,
Thank you for
before she goes,
inviting.
can I just ask how long the housing review will be available? How much funding did you get for this term?
So that's a really good question that I don't have a really firm answer on now. We are talking in communications with the state right now about an amendment to our contract so we can serve people past June of 2025. We're still in negotiations there. It looks like it's going to be possible, but I don't have a firm answer yet. So we know for sure June of 2025. I'm anticipating we'll be able to serve people through the next biennium as well.
Thank you.
I see one more question here real quick from April. The name of the facility in Vancouver, it's called Stevens Place. And you can Google that. We've had actually one of our families, their daughter moved there and she's loving it. And I've been down there. It's a beautiful place. And unfortunately, you can't use your Medicaid there.
Yeah. Very. Back to our host. Let's see. I'm going to step back a step. Thank you so much for being with us, Pam. And I'm going to show a video that Senator Yasmin Trudeau sent us. So hold on while I do some technology stuff. Okay, do you see a picture of her?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to see if this works. Oh, hold on. I think I have to, I got to make sure the sound's there. Hold on, I got to do it one more time.
A big thank you for
Oops.
everyone who's taken the time to come down to Olympia today to advocate on behalf of our community members with disabilities. Your stories help us understand the needs that we need to meet and address. One of the areas that I am so proud to work on and that I will continue to fight hard for is within housing. We were able to set aside $25 million for folks with developmental disabilities, specifically in the Housing Trust Fund. I want to keep that going. We know that that doesn't come close to the need, but we're going to keep fighting for that, and thank you for coming down to Olympia to fight with us.
That's a good video.
Stop sharing. Yeah, it was a very short video. She wanted to be with us today and she was unable to be with us, so she sent her video in advance.
Okay. So maybe we can add it another time. Okay. Now I'm gonna do it over.
Next up, it's my honor to welcome Zach St. John from Parkview Services, who will be talking about the need for housing.
Back.
And
hi, everyone. I'm here for Zach.
oh, good.
Okay.
He's hopefully enjoying a much needed vacation. So thank you for having me. I'm Andrea Davis. I am the Affordable Housing Program Director at Parkview Services. And I do have a bad habit of speaking quickly, so please interrupt me if I'm going too fast. So I'm going to speak from the housing developer perspective about the battle to add more of the type of housing that we need for people with IDD. Parkview Services is a nonprofit housing developer, and we focus on developing high quality, community-based affordable housing for people with IDD, and we've been doing this for almost 30 years. We have 70 properties in 3 counties and house over 200 tenants. So our mission is to continue to grow. I'm going to share a little bit of what we know from our experience about the critical unmet need to rapidly expand housing options for people with IDD. So Kathy mentioned this unprecedented statewide demand for housing and the 2021 report that was released to the legislature that drew attention to the fact that there are 37,000 people with IDD in Washington state alone that have an unmet housing need. That number is staggering and should be a wake-up call that without significant efforts at all levels, from the legislature to local jurisdictions, advocacy groups, housing developers, we need creative solutions and quickly to meet the tidal wave of housing need. And this is especially important because we know that the type of housing needed for our population requires thoughtful planning and consideration and might not fit with what the current understanding of typical affordable housing is. So we know that community-based housing is the most successful housing model for people with IDD, and that this model of housing is what should continue to be developed. People are more successful when they live in their chosen home and are integrated into their neighborhoods and communities. However, the community-based housing model for people with IDD does require thoughtful development that takes into consideration the unique needs of tenants with IDD. So community-based, when I say that, often means single-family homes or condos where tenants live together as roommates. And it is not necessarily the super high density, huge multifamily projects that often get a lot of attention in the affordable housing world. Homes for people with IDD need to be accessible. So they need to be appropriate for people with limited mobility, including things like access ramps, roll-in showers, reinforced walls, durable flooring, widened hallways and doorways, and accessible kitchens. And we also need to take into account that many people with IDD rely on supported living staff or other kinds of staff and family to help them successfully live in the community. So this means providing housing with ample parking and access to transit for staff or family who might commute. And we also know that there is not a one-size-fits-all model of housing that will work for everyone with IDD. While single-family scattered site homes work for many people, there are some folks who cannot live with roommates or shared walls, so we have to think of creative ways to provide housing for them too. Because of the unique model of housing that is needed for people with IDD, collaboration is key among people who serve this population to develop housing. So with housing developers, advocates, people with lived experience, we can share successes and grow together and speak with one voice when we advocate for the policy changes that we know will be required to meet the unprecedented need. And many folks here are involved in making inroads, developing advocacy working groups in the development space, and more of that is needed. And then I'll just close with something that has been resonating with our team at Parkview lately, and that is for every single new unit of housing we build, it represents another family who can rest easier knowing their loved one has a safe, affordable place to call home. And that is.
Thank you.
Let's see. I don't see any questions.
Any questions for Andrea? Yeah. I don't see any.
I'll put my email in the chat too, and then anyone can reach out to me directly if there's housing questions for a housing developer, landlord.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks.
Yeah. Oh, we do have a question.
I was just thinking about what do you mean by Andrea? Hi.
Hi.
What do you mean by building by that housing? That's what I wanted to know, what you mean by that.
Building more housing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we aim for building affordable housing, so permanently affordable housing. So housing that is for people that are the extremely low income, so the 30% or lower of area median income that Kathy mentioned, where they only pay 30% of their income for their rent. And that's the kind of housing that we develop. Did that answer your question or?
Yeah, because I wasn't sure because I was like, is it for developing housing for the people who can't afford it, or who the people who are able to do it too?
Yeah, so I mean, there's other housing developers that develop housing, all the way across the market. But we know that there's a huge need for people that are at 30% or lower AMI, because as Kathy showed, it's impossible to pay market rent for an apartment when you are only receiving what the SSI maximum is. So that's primarily the space that we're focused on adding more housing in.
Are you guys located in Olympia?
We right now we're in our office is in Linwood, and our houses are in King County mostly, and some in Snohomish County and some in Pierce County. We recently just received funding from Washington State to add some houses in Thurston County. So that would be Olympia, but not yet. So that will
Because
be our
I'm
next.
interested.
Yeah, we're trying to expand. We know the need is there and we want to grow. We just have to get the money to do
Yeah,
that.
I get it. Everything is about income. I get it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Something about the Emily.
So next on the agenda for today, we have Paula Costa from DDA talking about adult family home pilot.
So Paula's not here today. She's not able to be here today. So I am putting a link to the report about the pilot in the chat box. The pilot worked in adult family. I'll just give you a quick brief. Gave adult family homes an additional rate to be able to get people out into the community. It was only for about 100 people, and we have about 2,000 people with IDD in adult family homes across the state. So it only covers a small portion, but the cool thing is some really cool stuff happened, and it allowed people to get out and try some things, and it was very person-centered, and do things in the community, which sometimes adult family homes have difficulties having resource to be able to do that. So that was kind of a cool thing. You can read more about it in the report that's in the chat box.
Awesome. Thank you, Kathy. So next we have Darcy Ledwig from Peace Northwest talking about Peace's home housing program.
Hi, I'm Darcy Ladwig, Peace Northwest. Darla is here as well and has a piece presentation.
I don't know how much time we have, but I'm going to make this really quick. So, there, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is just a little bit about peace and the things that we do. So we do advocacy, legislative action, the Parent Coalition Home, which is housing options must exist. And that is a huge piece of what we're doing these days. And we're going to go into great detail on that in just a second. We do provide special education supports, trainings and events, special celebrations, parent to parent, and much more. With us, with Peace, the answer is yes. And the question is how. Our goal is to always help people figure out what it is they need and how they can get that done. We're not one of those organizations that says no. We just figure out what has to happen to make that, to make whatever it is happen. What we're not, we do not have a drop-down menu of services. If you come to us and what you need doesn't exist, our goal is to try and find someone or a way that we can help get that created for you. We are not a direct service provider, and we are not Peace Health. We're out in the community. We have building independence, and you're going to hear a little bit more about that, because one of the things we've learned as we go into this housing world is that the house itself is not going to help somebody be successful. Affordable housing is absolutely needed, but we need additional supports as well. And this Building Independence is a peer-led group of individuals that are they bring forward what they want to learn. We bring in guest speakers. They meet every week to try to learn new skills or learn new information about what they need to be successful in living more independently. We help facilitate the People First down in Southwest Washington. And I'm going to pass it over to Darcy to talk specifically about home. Oh, you're on mute, Darcy.
Sorry, of course I'm having internet issues today. I typed our website in the chat wrong twice. So if you could do that, Darla.
Okay.
As I mentioned, I'm Darcy Ladwig, and I am the housing coordinator at Peace Northwest. And our housing options must exist. Please check out our website because it has some useful tools. And also some great videos from, and I don't know if we have time to share, about our independence coordination, but we're really doing some that one-on-one meet you where you're at approach to finding the right housing fit for you. Through individualized coaching, independence coordination, client-driven goal setting, helping to understand the different options that Kathy showed earlier that are out there. And then we are one of the partners with Partners for Housing that can direct people to the benefit and housing review, and then also to eventually find a housemate. And we have some housemate matching that goes on kind of informally, locally. We provide that consistent support, and then we recognize people's milestones and do a weekly housing tidbits newsletter that goes out with just articles that maybe are around housing or availability of housing that we are aware of in different areas and things like that. And I will stop talking, and I'll put my contact information in the chat.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Darcy. If you've got questions specifically about peace, there's that. I would love to share the video if we've got time. It's 3 minutes. Would that be possible?
I think that's great.
Okay, so let me get this all set up first because I'm not that technologically challenged, or I am technologically challenged. Okay, we want that. Where's the share the sound? Okay, and we want this one. Okay, so this is one of our programs that we have that helps individuals be successful in living independently. You hear that?
When stuff like the rent and bills come up, I would just easily panic. I would get into this panic attacks about what should I do, or how much money should I save up. And I've been in a depressed mode for years now. And it's almost like I can barely even stop it.
When making the transition to living on their own, adults can often feel pain.
I was a little worried of what I was gonna do and react to it. And change for me is hard.
Just to experience a new experience that I'd never done, that part was, I think, the most nerve-wracking part for me. And then leaving some people in Olympia that I'll just say really liked a lot. I think that was the most nerve-wracking part.
That's where Peace's independent coordination helps provide support.
So my job consists of helping adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities navigate the systems or find the systems that they might not be aware even exist. So I work very closely with filling out paperwork for DDA, SSI, if they need appeals, things like that. I can help navigate those systems, as well as I've helped find housing and food stamps. It's such a broad spectrum of things that I do, but it's really wherever they need help, I'm there to help provide that. I love working with the adults. It makes way more of an impact and such a ripple effect and such an impact than anything I could have ever imagined. And honestly, working with them is just the highlight of my week.
I didn't like the idea of that change. But after all, I have the best ones here.
The change was really hard at first. But now I'm glad that I did it because I do have the best ones.
Now, I'm calm and positive, and I'm just really at peace. I feel really at peace. I feel really safe with them around. They really help me out a lot. They've helped me out a lot, and I feel like I could trust them.
The Community Foundation of Southwest Washington gave us money to fund this position, and we are beyond grateful because we have already helped the people that we said we were going to help, and plus nearly doubled that. And then we have others that we can help. We are so grateful for the grant and the resources and be able to navigate the systems and just really help people. And it seems like it's such a simple concept and just a simple thing that I'm doing, but it's not. Because to them, it's so much bigger than that. It's giving them more independence and more of a life and not having to worry about navigating the systems all alone. I really, really hope that they get what they need and that they can live the lives of their dreams. Like, I don't want them to feel limited by anything. And if it's, like I said earlier, if it's something as simple as sending them a text or making sure that they have housing, I just really want them to be able to live the life that they truly believe that they can.
Okay, so let me turn that off. So anyway, that was Erin. She's our independence coordinator. And one of the things that I hear is that, well, we don't want to have to depend on somebody else. And I'm just here to say that all of us need assistance and help in what we do. I don't think anybody on the planet can live completely on their own without any assistance or help from someone else, right? I know I have people that come in and help me all the time, and I don't know what I would do without my team and the people that help me here at my house. And so we're just here to help people navigate and find what they need. And Darcy put her contact information in there. You can give her a call if you have any questions around housing or you need any other assistance. Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay. Oh, Martha.
Hi.
What's your question, Martha?
Okay, I'm just unmuting. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to talk about how we've also started this housing committee, people involved in housing. And the way it's kind of worked is that we started out with some people from Peace and some parents, and then we have meetings, and it's kind of ended up every week or every month we invite somebody else, and we've made this great network. So we have people from the city that know what we're doing. We have people from DDA, we have people from the county. We have someone from the Vancouver Housing Authority. And so just this power of networking has been really important. So I would encourage you, if you've got a group locally, to explore what the options are, because there's really a lot of creative stuff out there.
Yeah, thank you, Martha. I just want to add to that. We also have one of those county groups in Spokane County, and we're working on creating one for a few of the other counties that we're in. Christy?
Thank you, Darla. Hi, this is Christy with the council. There was just a question in the chat box or the Q&A from Andrea asking, how do people access services from Peace Northwest?
You give us a call or you send us an email. That's all you've got to do. And we'll make sure our contact is in the chat box as well. And if you Google Peace Northwest, Peace NW, we will come up. You have to add the NW or you're going to get a whole bunch of other things. But if you Google Peace NW, we will come up.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for the time.
Thank you, Darla. Now it's our pleasure to introduce the next speaker, and that is Ramona from the Arlington County, talking about the rent stabilization.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ramona Handorf. I'm the Director of Public Policy at the King County. And I want to shift gears a little bit and move to thinking a little bit more about housing and homelessness and how it affects families who have members with disabilities. So not necessarily just the individual who might be older and wanting or needing to move out on their own, but the entire family. So we know housing is critical, and we know people on extremely low fixed incomes, like they're not going to suddenly get a whole lot of new income coming in. Like by fixed income, it's pretty much that's their income today. It's going to be their income tomorrow. And unless something like their Social Security benefits get an increase, that's what their income is going to be. So we need that. We know that there's a big need for these families on fixed incomes that are low. And we also know that people with disabilities need accessible homes and that everybody needs safe homes. So one part of ensuring affordable, safe, and accessible housing is to make sure renters can stay stably housed. So I want to talk a little bit about, it's one idea, it's two bills, they're companion, but it's the same idea. And that's about housing stabilization or rent stabilization. And so these are not for people who own their own homes. This is for people who rent. And a lot of our focus today, as I said earlier, was on the individuals moving out. And so I just want to shift gears a little bit and talk about what does it mean for a family who has members with disabilities who are on low income and they're trying to make sense of our rental market and they're trying to stay safe and housed in an appropriate place. So a lot of families who have children with disabilities are actually renters, but we're not all homeowners. And many have very low fixed incomes again. And the constant rent increases can mean they are constantly moving in and out of housing, or they're stuck in a place that they really can't afford. And if they really can't afford it, then that means they might go without other essentials like food. Stephanie is a member on our staff, and she works specifically with housing stability. And specifically, her grant funding is to make sure youth stay stably housed. So a lot of the people she works with are actually families with younger kids. And so she was saying, she came up with an example of me of something that she interacts with. She says she sees every day how the rising rents are impacting the families she supports, and inadequate tenant protections, how that's affecting them. And that really helps push them further into crisis. One client is a single mother of 5 kids, and she had to leave one apartment because she just couldn't afford the rent. So she found a new one. It wasn't easy, but she found a new one. Just 2 months after moving into a new place, and after all the expense and upheaval that cost her and her kids, her new landlord announced a rent increase of 10.4%. Or that for her budget, that meant $185 more a month. And that's not uncommon. In this area, tenants will move in thinking, okay, this is what my rent is going to be, and I can do that. But then they see it get increased way sooner than they expected. And so in that case, $185, that was money that she had budgeted for formula and diapers and some other essential needs for her kids. So enter the rent stabilization bills. So this is an idea that, okay, what if we factor in the rent increases that landlords say they need to have, but we just make it so that we're not kicking people out of their house. Like, how do we reach that middle ground? So the concept, the idea is to keep rents from jumping too high too soon. And again, they don't prevent rent increases, but they do assure tenants that there'll be no increase for 1 year, and that when rents do go up, they'll be limited to just 7% a year. And like, what does percentage mean? In this case, it meant that instead of $185 a month, it would be $124 a month. And maybe you think that's not a big deal, but it is. $61 a month for this mom would make a huge difference. That makes a huge difference for things as basic as wipes and diapers and formula. So again, what we're trying to do with the rent stabilization is balance out these needs. In a time when more and more families whose members have disabilities are being pushed into homelessness. And also with that rent stabilization, if the rent was going up, she would then have a year to prepare. And then after the increase again, she would have had a little bit more money. So these bills are called House Bill 1217 and Senate Bill 5222. And I'll put links in the chat in just a minute. A companion bill is when you have basically one, it's the same one, and it's introduced in two different chambers. And right now they say the same thing, that they could change. One has moved out of its policy committee and the other one hasn't, but both of them had the hearings. And what they do is they would allow increases of 7% a year. They would prevent increases in the first year. They would standardize some things about how tenants are notified of rent and fees, so it's not a surprise for every place you move into. They have some limits on how much move-in fees can cost, or how big of a security deposit you make, or how much you have to pay in late fees. So they try to keep fees from also pushing people out of house. And then also new construction is exempt. So for 10 years, it wouldn't apply to the new construction. And there's some low income housing out there right now that it wouldn't necessarily apply to. It could be because it's already public housing. There could be some other specific rules or laws that they're under. So it doesn't apply to all housing, but it applies to a lot of the housing that families who are on low fixed incomes are trying to navigate and trying to find a place to live in. It does a few other things. I'll put that into the chat. These are bills that we're supporting at the King County, and we're trying to let people know about them. Again, it's something that especially I think affects families with kids out there, though it can also affect adults with disabilities who have kids. And maybe they're not on SSI, but they're on a very low fixed income. Thanks.
Thank you, Ramona. Our next great speaker is Tracy Turner, lived experience, and she'll be talking about her housing story. Go ahead, Tracy.
Tracy, are you there? You need to unmute.
So my name is Tracy Turner, and I've been looking for housing for a very long time. I have a new housing navigator that's been helping me, and they build these brand new apartments around my neighborhood, but you don't have enough income to move in, and we need to have more housing for people like 55 and disabled and senior citizens. And it's just very, it's high cost of living, and and I really am strong about housing. Thank you for listening to my story.
Thank you, Tracy. Now it's our Kathy Marahasi, our next speaker, and she'll be talking about going over the bills of interest with us.
Great. I'm gonna I'm putting the link to the bills of interest in the chat box. And then I'm going to share my screen to see. This is what you'll see if you go to that link. And so you'll see three things here: hearings, budget side by side, but we're going to look at bills of interest right now. And let me make this just a bit bigger. Can you all see that now?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Now you all disappeared, but I don't, I can't see where you guys went, but okay. Let's talk quick through some of these bills. I'm going to scroll down. So housing, as you heard today, those are the two bills that there's one that 1010 authorized accessory dwelling units in rural areas. that means, like being able to build a cottage in the back of your home. And apparently it's difficult to do in rural areas, and this bill would address some of the issues there. And then there's the two bills that Ramona just talked about that are there. They've had hearings already. So you should know today is kind of a big day. At 1:30 in the House Early Learning and Human Services Committee, they're going to be hearing a bunch of our bills, 5 of them. And one of those is repealing the Community Protection Program. That's House Bill 1390, which is probably important for some folks to know about. And it, even though what it does is it takes it out of the law, but it doesn't make people getting services. They're still going to get their service. It doesn't make the program go away, but it takes it out of law in case they choose to change things in the waivers in the future. There's also a bill in there about closing Yakima Valley School and Rainier School. That's House Bill 1472 and 5393. Right now, they're not up for any hearings, and I kind of would expect not to happen for a while. Probably closer till budget time. So that's probably important to know. And then let me scroll down a little bit. There's a bunch of bills in education, and I believe some of them have hearings this week. A bunch of them have to do with funding and inclusionary practices. The Inclusionary Practices Bill 1357 has a hearing on the tomorrow at 4:00. And there's also one about extending special education services to the end of the school year till somebody's 22. It used to say 21. Now they've changed it to 22. And that has a hearing tomorrow at 10:30 in Senate Early Learning in K-12. Let's see. Sorry, my screen jumped. Let's go back up a little bit. And then there's 2 funding bills. They've both had hearings already. So if those are important to you, we'll probably want to see what happens with them. Those are important because they do things like remove the cap or change the multiplier. Ramona can give more information if you're interested in what those bills actually do. Ramona, do you have that a link to the comparison that you have? Can you share that?
I will go find it and I will share it. Just give me a minute.
Thank you. Because it's hard to explain the differences between the bills. Oops, I didn't put the bill tracker number in there we go. Sorry, in the chat box. But I think that's it's easier to see on the chart. There are some hearing, again, a couple of bills that are going to be heard today. The improving inclusion services for individuals, community inclusion services for individuals with IDD. What that does is it moves community inclusion from the counties that administer it to DDA. And that bill is being heard today at 1:30 in House Early Learning and Human Services. There's also going to be a bill, it doesn't have a hearing yet, 1493, that would lower the age to be able to receive employment and community inclusion from 21 to age 19. And that, again, that's 1493. You might want to pay attention to that. There's a bill for the specific to Snohomish County about their supported living rates. That's 5125. Some of my stuff just all moved around. Sorry about that. Hold on. Also being heard today is 1130. It's about the waiver, prioritization of how they give out waivers. And one of the things they add people who are in crisis through what's called True Blood, but it also prioritizes senior families by saying individuals with IDD who are over the age of 45, there's an assumption that they have senior parents. And we think that's really important because right now, senior parents often get looked over in the process. And so anyway, that's being heard today at 1:30. Also today, the paying parents of minor children bill, one had a hearing, the Senate bill had a hearing yesterday or on Monday, and there's a hearing in that same hearing today. 1200 is being heard today. Let's see. And then there's also this little bill here that would add respite. 1344 would add respite to what we call the aggregate services. That's the menu of services on the Basic Plus waiver. So right now, you get respite. It's in a different silo. So you get your normal hours of respite per year. So oftentimes it's like 200 hours a year folks get. So you get that, and that's your respite bucket. But there's also this aggregate services bucket where you can just choose some other things. Excuse me. And that includes, like community engagement. If you need some extra specialized clothing and what they call specialized habilitation. I think they just now called it life skills. Anyway, that bucket right now does not have respite as one of the services you can choose. What this would do is add that as a service on that list. And so you would be able to use all the hours on your respite bucket. Plus, if you chose to choose, you could, in aggregate, to have respite as one of those services. So you'd have, say you have 100 hours a year in one, and then you'd have up to $6,100 in the other bucket to use for respite for a year. And that is being heard today at 1:30. There's a bill 1470 they were kind of concerned about that reduces the case managers on those on the no paid services caseload. And so we're watching for that. That was a request. It's kind of a way for them to save money. And then the rare disease bill 5064 and 1238, creating an advisory council on rare diseases. One had a hearing on Monday. And then, let's see, today is the 20th. They both have had hearings this week. So if those are important to you, you may want to weigh in with your legislature. And just some things that we're watching. Hopefully people are going to be asking for money for our supported living wage increase. We'll talk about next week's focus for Advocacy Day is supported living. So we'll be talking a lot about that next week. There's also asking for $50 million for housing out of a set aside in the Housing Trust Fund. So we're going to be asking for that. We're also some folks are going to be asking for a tiered respite rate so that, if people have higher support needs, whether it's personal care needs or behavioral support needs, that people who serve those get trained more and paid more. So we can watch for those coming up. So I think that's all of the bills for now. I just wanted to stop. I'm going to stop sharing. Let's see if I find you guys again and take a moment. I know we had this question earlier about what's happening at the federal level. And I know there was a lot of concern and worry yesterday about what was happening because the White House put out a notice that said all federal things were going to be frozen, grants, and we didn't know what all that meant. And at the same time, we also know that all the states' Medicaid portals weren't not able to be used. And people were concerned, is that going to impact, you know, it specifically said it wouldn't be for Medicare or like your social SSI checks. But there was a lot of questions about what did that mean and did it impact me or not. So a couple of things have happened, and one of them just happened in the last hour. One is that there was the court said you have to stop that. So there's a hold. So it's all the things that were said in that thing are not happening right now. They said they would look at it on Monday, but I just saw that the White House has rescinded that order. So they backed off. So for right now, things are okay. So y'all take a big deep breath, because I think we were all a little worried. But what I would say is that we probably really need to be advocating for our services, and particularly for Medicaid, because, you know, I think all of us, our folks rely on Medicaid. If you were at our live advocacy day, we took some small videos of people talking about why Medicaid mattered to them. If you want to make a 1-minute video with your phone and send it to us, we could use that. We could talk about that, about why Medicaid matters to you and your services that are important to you. So even, you know, breathe a sigh of relief, but be prepared to advocate throughout the year at a federal level. So, okay. Are there questions about any of the bills?
Hey, Kathy, this is Ramona. I have a question. I just want to let people know there is a big hearing at 1:30, and you can still sign in if you want on some of those bills until 12:30. And then if you want to put in a written testimony, you can do that until tomorrow, 1:30. And these are probably the main bills that we're going to see for specific to DDA issues. So today's kind of your big day to weigh in for the committee hearing. Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Sean, this is Cal. I'll be going to that committee hearings this afternoon on early child the education one / DD services, because I'm testifying on community protection this afternoon.
And I'll be testifying this afternoon as well for the community protection program. And I did sign in as for my legislative record for the other bills, but today's hearing at 1:30.
That's awesome. Okay. Are you ready for the video?
Yes, just a sec. I gotta pull it back up. Okay.
I have a copy of.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead?
So I'm gonna save that down. Okay. Can people see the screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Sean Latham, the Policy Coordinator for Self-Advocates in Leadership.
And I'm Jessica Renner from Self-Advocates in Leadership.
We want to thank everyone for taking your time out today to join us for Advocacy Days. We're here to talk to you about how to become a trusted resource for legislators on issues affecting your life. Even though your elected officials represent you, they can't do this very well if they don't know what you want. We want to encourage you to contact your legislators throughout session, but especially this week, about the issues that matter to you.
That's right. With so many topics for legislators to learn about, your knowledge of developmental disabilities helps them to do their job. You are the expert in telling your story and how it relates to decisions they are making. Here are some tips to help you make the most impact. Your time with legislators, staff, or aides is short, and your message should be too. When you communicate, Sum up what the issue is and why it's important to you. Have a specific request related to a bill or budget item. Attack the problem, not the person. Follow up with a thank you. By doing this, you greatly increase your credibility and strengthen your legislative relationships. Bottom line, stick to what you know, which is your life, and how the issue affects you.
Here are some ways that you can reach out to your legislators. You can email them and their legislative assistant about your priorities. You can contact them through the legislative hotline phone number, which is 1-800-562-6000, and ask to leave a message for them. You can also share your opinion on a particular bill by using the hotline. We also encourage you to request either an in-person meeting with your legislators or a meeting with them over Zoom or Microsoft Teams. Please reach out to the legislative assistant of the legislator to request a meeting. You can watch the legislature at work on TVW, either on your TV, if you have the channel, or online at tvw.org. Another way you can participate is by signing up to testify at legislative hearings. For each hearing, you can sign up for the individual bills as pro, meaning you are for the bill, con, meaning you are against the bill, or other if you have concerns with the bill you generally like.
Let me now take you through the process using the Washington State Legislative website that can be found at leg.wi.gov. On the website under the menu, click on the menu item that states Bills, Meetings, and Session. From there, scroll down to the section titled Upcoming Committee Meetings and click on the link titled Sign into a Committee Meeting. Next, choose if you are testifying in a House hearing or testifying in a Senate hearing. We all have the choice to testify in person, testify by video remotely, or we can submit written testimony or just state what our position is on the bill.
After you pick one of the options, you will be taken to the form to register. You will need to fill out your position, your name, your email, your address, your phone number, and your organization, if you are representing one. It also asks you if you will testify on a panel or not. If you are testifying on a panel, it will ask you to fill in the names of the other panelists. The other box to make note of is the pronunciation box. If you want your name said right, you can sound it out in that box. Please check the box "I'm not a robot" at the end of the form, and then it's time to hit Submit Registration. Once you submit your registration, you will receive an email from a committee staff email address. Please read this email carefully and add the meeting to your desired calendar using the links in the email. From there, make sure you are ready to testify.
Don't forget about social media. A lot of legislators have accounts on Facebook and Twitter where you can comment or watch live stream chats and virtual town halls.
It's so important to stay informed and involved. Participate in virtual advocacy days, sign up for the Arc of Washington's action alerts, get updates at arcwa.org, and follow on Facebook. Connect with local parent and self-advocate groups. And remember, change is made by those who show up.
Okay, let me switch to my live. No. Give me 1 second, guys. Okay.
This is Sean. Today we talked about how can individuals have a safe and affordable place to live. I think we can all agree that in addition to having a roof over our head, we need housing that are accessible, we need housing that are barrier-free, we need housing in all communities, and we need housing in safe communities. We know people with I/DD are considered extremely low income, with some just getting the standard supplemental security income amount of $967 a month. It is also important to note that only 6% of U.S. housing is accessible. We know due to inflation housing prices have skyrocketed. So due to these and other factors, we have an I/DD housing shortage of 37,000 units. What we need significant investments in affordable, accessible housing.
Sorry about that, guys. Give me 1 second. Stupid.
We know due to inflation housing prices have skyrocketed. So due to these and other factors, we have an I/DD housing shortage of 37,000 units. What we need significant investments in affordable, accessible housing for individuals with I/DD. Please help us today advocate for an ongoing revenue source for DD housing. And help us advocate for $50 million for the DD Housing Trust Fund. We encourage this week to reach out to your legislators on each of these important housing topics. I will add it's very important to reach out to the new legislators especially, to educate them about our issues. Sharing your personal stories is one of the best ways for your legislators to get to know what you need. I wanted to encourage you to watch and follow the legislative process by watching TVW on the television or by going to tvw.org online. For more information about these and other issues you learned about today, I'm going to post this week's one-pager in the chat. Also again, please see the ARC's bills of interests for additional information. Lastly, I want to encourage you to fill out our Advocacy Day survey. This helps us understand what you like and what you didn't like about Advocacy Day, so we can get better and better. You have the option of filling out the Zoom survey that you should see on the screen now, or alternatively you can click on the links I posted in the chat. There will be an English and Spanish link. Let us know after if you need any assistance in filling out the survey. With that, I will just thank you for joining us today, and remember, change is made by those who show up. Thank you.
And if for those of you that might like to stay a little longer, we were going to show, there's a video put out by NPR. It's about 10 minutes long about housing issues for people with IDD. So if you're interested in staying, please fill out the form, but I can start the video while we do that. And thank you for all being here. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. And you don't have to stay for this part if you don't want to. Do you see that? Do you see that now?
No.
Oh, sorry. Okay, hold on. Hold on. That's
Now we're going to see it.
okay. Oh, it's got the advertisement. Sorry. So hold on. We'll just have to bear that. Nope. No, I'm getting the wrong thing here. Hold on. Sorry, there's like 20 seconds.
Shall we? It's not only the animals we need to consider, but the people too.
It's always good to have everyone back together again.
Sorry.
All creatures, great and small. A new season on Masterpiece.
But first, to the nation's affordable housing shortage. Millions of Americans are priced out of homes and apartments, and for people with disabilities, finding an accessible place they can afford can be even more challenging. Judy Woodruff reports as part of our series, Disability Reframed.
34-year-old Jensen Caraballo considered himself lucky when he moved into this apartment more than a decade ago. After searching for 2 years, he found a one-bedroom in Rochester, New York, where he lives with 24/7 care from in-home attendants like Luis.
I'll be honest, I settled for less. I needed a 2-bedroom apartment that was affordable and accessible. And this place was not it. But it was the only way that I should live independently. So I settled for less.
Caraballo has spinal muscular atrophy, a neuromuscular disability, and has used a wheelchair since he was a child. At 15 years old, he moved into a nursing home.
I remember feeling neglected, living in a nursing home as a teenager was very challenging and honestly traumatic. I felt stripped of my autonomy.
But his apartment is far from ideal. The bathroom is too small for him to close the door, and almost everything in his kitchen is inaccessible. You have to back in order to open the refrigerator, right?
Yes.
And then what about on the sink?
I have no access.
He says he moved in because there were no other options in his budget. Caraballo receives Supplemental Security Income, or SSI, a monthly benefit program many people with disabilities rely on. He uses the SSI payment and a housing voucher to help cover his rent, but says it isn't enough to pay for the apartment and all of his other monthly expenses.
Sometimes there's a bill that doesn't get paid. Sometimes I'm in the negative in my bank account. I ask for family and friends to chip in if they are able to. That takes a lot out of me to have to ask for help. This is my story, but it's not just my story. It's an issue that has impacted the disability community for a very long time.
More than 4 million people with disabilities who receive SSI can't afford rent in any U.S. housing market. The maximum SSI payment for one person is about $950 a month. It is the sole source of income for many who receive it, and it's used to pay for everything from housing to food and transportation. Even in America's cheapest rental market, Dallas County, Missouri, rent for a one-bedroom would require 64% of a monthly SSI payment.
We've set up a situation where millions of people with disabilities can't afford to live anywhere in the United States.
Erin Nguyen-Neff is a staff attorney at the Disability Rights, Education, and Defense Fund and represents people in court cases involving housing discrimination. Nguyen-Neff says even when people with disabilities do find affordable housing, ensuring their space is accessible can be daunting.
A person with a disability might need a home health aide to live in with them. This could technically be a violation of your lease. There might be some limitation on how many people can be in that apartment and for what period of time. Another classic example is having basic modifications to your home, like having bars in the bathroom. So if you have a mobility disability, it's easier for you to use a shower, to use a toilet.
In 1988, former President Ronald Reagan signed an extension of the Fair Housing Act to prohibit discrimination on the basis of disability. But Nguyen-Neff says all too often, landlords ignore tenants with disabilities or deny requests for reasonable accommodation. Last year, more than half of all housing complaints filed nationwide were disability-related. Nguyen-Neff says that reality and a shortage of in-home support services like direct care workers gives some people with disabilities no option but to live in nursing homes or other institutions.
If we can make some changes to our society, provide some more support and services, a person with a disability can live independently and can do a lot of the same things people without disabilities can.
Just off a light rail station stop in San Jose, California, a new apartment building offers an alternative. The Kelsey Air Station is home to people with and without disabilities across various income levels.
Whether you're a person with disabilities who SSI is your sole source of income and you have almost no money to pay rent, or you're middle income making $100,000 a year, that this community meets that diverse level of affordability.
Michaela Connery is co-founder and CEO of the Kelsey, the nonprofit that co-developed the building. She started it with her cousin, Kelsey, who had multiple disabilities and was an advocate for inclusion. She says what makes the building unique is its focus on fostering community with resident outings and monthly meetings led by so-called inclusion concierges who connect residents to services.
From, I need a transit pass, how do I get there, to, I'm in a crisis and I need my service and case manager to all come together and help me get through this crisis, to, I'm looking for a social group to be involved in that's around the arts. Do you have any suggestions?
And from the beginning, people with and without disabilities took part in workshops to decide what the building's design and services should look like, including 33-year-old Isaac Haney Owens, who has autism. He showed us around the Kelsey Sensory Garden.
It gives people a place to be able to decompress if they need to get away from the stimulation that's going on in the building. We want to show the world that people with and without disabilities can live together and not be separated from each other when it comes to housing.
25% of the building's units are reserved for people with disabilities. They include kitchens and bathrooms with removable cabinets for wheelchair users and dimmable lighting for people with light sensitivity. Floors are coded by number, color, and symbol to help with wayfinding. 39-year-old Trevor Luckin moved to the Kelsey in June. He loves being in the kitchen and dreams of starting his own cooking show.
I put the butter in and then put the egg in after, and then I take my bagel seasoning right on top.
Luckin has Down syndrome and says he enjoys using the building's gym and having his own space. Having your own room where you can do what you want to do, what does that mean to you?
It's more comfortable. I just like it because I can get my own privacy.
The building project was financed with a combination of government funding, philanthropy, low-income tax credits, and loans. Connery says she hopes to expand the housing model to more states, but the biggest challenge is funding.
Having that either philanthropic or public subsidy to bring into these is crucial to make sure you serve the deepest need. Because affordability is so critical, and having units available for folks with disabilities who have no familial support and no other funding available, if we only wanted to serve people who were middle and high income, then maybe you could explore a for-profit model.
And attorney Nguyen Neff says making housing affordable and accessible nationwide starts with policy.
Having adequate rent regulation or rent control to help keep rents regulated and low for people with disabilities and for low-income people, increasing funding so that people with disabilities have greater access to housing, but also changing the way we look at housing to remove the profit motive and center the people living there.
Back in Rochester, Jensen Caraballo says ultimately, changing the status quo around housing starts with shifting how others think about disability.
I think we often feel shame and embarrassment when it comes to disability. There's this narrative that you're better off dead than disabled. And we have to change that. Disability is a natural and normal thing. It's a part of life, and it can affect any of us at any time.
He says he's hopeful that he will one day find a new place he can call home. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Judy Woodruff in Rochester, New York.
Just letting you know that we sent the link to this to all the legislators as well. So thanks for sticking around. Thank you all for being here. And next week is Supported Living Advocacy Day. Just FYI, the live rally that was going to happen next week is being rescheduled, but the Advocacy Day, the virtual Advocacy Day is still on at 10 o'clock next week about supported living. So great. Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good afternoon.